hello, welcome back. My name is Kim. This is Kim Reads and Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing the My Reading Habits tag. I saw Monzi complete this tag. I will put her channel and the video itself down below, but I figured that this would be a really fun tag. I'm seeing that there's quite a few new faces to the channel, which is really nice. Thank you so much for subscribing. I'm really happy that you're here and you're here for the fun and for the book reviews and whatnot. I really enjoy doing this, so I figured that doing a tag on my reading habits would help you kind of get to know how I go about reading and how I approach this hobby in general. So the first question is, do you have a certain place at home for reading? Yes, I have two places. One being my living room. I love to drink my coffee in the morning and read a couple of chapters of my book before I start my workday. And on the weekend, when I'm not working, I can just read for however long in the morning. It's so lovely. And then my bed. I read on my e-reader at night, and I often fall asleep reading my e-reader. Do you use a bookmark or a random piece of paper? I will use whatever I can find, really. Typically it's some stray piece of paper or a ripped off corner from one of my notebooks, and I'll just put that in. But I used to actually collect bookmarks when I was a kid. If anybody remembers, like the Scholastic School book fairs, I think they were called. But yeah, I would buy however many bookmarks, and they were so cheap back then. They were like 5 cents, 10 cents or whatever. And so yeah, I used to collect them. I have no idea where they are now. Chances are they've been tossed out at this point, but I did want to share a bookmark that my partner had gotten for me. So he was at a farmer's market. There was this little girl who had a stand next to her parents' booth, and her parents were selling something. I can't remember what it was. I wasn't there with him, but she was selling bookmarks for free, and they're ones that she had made, and he picked me up one and brought it home for me, and it literally just made my day. And so whenever I use this bookmark, it makes me think that, one, my partner was kind enough to think of me when he walked past this little girl's stand and picked me up a bookmark, because he knows obviously I read. And yeah, it says "have a nice day," and it has these like little stickers on it and stuff. It used to have a loosely kind of tied tassel on it which fell off, but I think it's so cute, and yeah, I thought it was so thoughtful. So this is like currently my favorite go-to bookmark, but more often than not it is just whatever I can find. The third question is, can you just stop reading, or do you have to stop after a chapter / certain amount of pages? Typically I like to read a chapter. I like to stop after reading a chapter. Or there's like normally like a page break within a chapter, I'll stop there. But yeah, typically, depending on how long the chapters are too, like some books have insanely long chapters, so I'm not going to sit down in the morning with my cup of coffee before work and be able to read like a 20-page chapter. So I'll often, give and take there. But with my e-reader, because I typically fall asleep while reading that, I don't really have much of a say in whether I fall asleep at the end of the chapter or perfectly time it. Do you eat or drink while reading? I generally do have some kind of a liquid with me when I'm reading. I don't know why I worded it that way. That was really odd. Like I mentioned, I always have like my morning cup of coffee and I read a chapter from a book I have going on. I always have my water with me too. Eating, that is a little bit probably more difficult to do, especially when I'm reading like a physical book, because yeah, especially if the eating, sorry, my cat just knocked the tripod. Anyways, especially if the eating requires both my hands, like tacos, The fifth question is, do you listen to music or watch TV while reading? I do not watch TV while reading. I don't know, like sometimes it's playoff hockey right now, and so sometimes hockey will be on, and during intermission I'll be like reading and the TV will be on in the background, but I'm not actively listening to the TV. I'm actively like paying attention to what I'm reading instead. So I don't know how to multitask in that way. I will listen to an audiobook and like putz around the house and clean, which I've mentioned I think multiple times here. Like cleaning on the weekend and audiobooks is like the perfect pairing for me. I get a ton done, and if I'm really invested in my audiobook, my house is so clean because I will just look for things to do and clean while listening to this audiobook. But I also don't listen to music while reading. I should probably try and give that a go. I know on sprints they normally when people do sprints, they'll have like the ambiance sounds of whatever they choose to have as like the video that's like continuing while you're reading and while you're sprinting. But yeah, I never really thought of that. Maybe I'll give it a go one time. I don't think I'd be able to listen to music like with lyrics and words. I'd probably only be able to listen to instrumental music. But yeah, because it would probably confuse my brain and I would think like, yeah, the wires would get crossed somewhere. So the sixth question is, do you read one book at a time or several at once? I used to be a one book at a time reader, and in the last few months I changed and started reading multiple books, or have multiple books in rotation. So ideally I'll have one in each format. So an ebook, an audiobook, and then a physical book. Ideally they're different genres, or they're books that aren't too similar. I find it's been really enjoyable implementing that, because if I'm getting kind of tired of the physical book that I'm reading, or just wanting something a little bit different from that, rather than DNFing it and moving on to something else, I would just pick up whatever book I was reading on my e-reader and read that instead. Like, just kind of mix things up. So then when I go back to the physical book, I don't feel kind of like burnt out on the story or the world that I'm in. Because sometimes, I'm not quite sure why, but sometimes I can get impatient with books. Riley Sager is a perfect example that I always sometimes lose patience with the books. It's like, come on, man, like, let's just get to the point here. Not with all his books, not with the ones I've really enjoyed, but sometimes they do tend to drag, and I just find that it helps with my general reading enjoyment a little bit more if I have multiple books in rotation. The seventh question is, do you read at home or everywhere? More often than not at home. Yeah, I read in the morning, I read in the evening, I read in my bed. When I was in school, I would always read on the bus in the morning and on the way home. On road trips, I don't tend to read on long car rides because I'm trying to keep whoever's with me company. Or if I'm hiking, I'll always bring my e-reader along with me, but that's not like a consistent thing. I only hike and camp in the summertime. So yeah, more often than not at home in the comforts of my own home with my cats and my various liquids. The eighth question is, do you read out loud or silently in your head? I read silently in my head like 99% of the time. I've only done it with like a couple of books. Like if I'm having trouble getting into like a flow, then I'll kind of like whisper read to myself, but that is so rare. Do you read ahead or ever skip pages? Oh my gosh, scandalous. No, I don't. I don't read ahead or skip pages. I will do it if I am on the verge of DNFing a book. I think about books like The Silent Patient. I think it was Riley Sager's House Across the Lake. There's a couple of other ones where I have skipped ahead just to kind of like get it going, and I'm like, okay, is this going to like pick up here? Is the writing going to jive with me at some point? And that's honestly a telltale sign for me that it's like, DNF this book, is if I'm skipping pages or wanting to just like flip ahead a little bit or jump or whatever. Like, yeah, that's normally my sign that I'm done with this book. Like I've completely lost patience for it. 10th question is, do you break the spine or keep it new? Doesn't really matter to me. There's quite a few books on here that I think don't have their spines broken yet or have even been cracked, but most of my books I have read. So I typically read the book from my library first, and then if I really enjoy it, then I will go ahead and buy it. So I've read most of these and loved most of them, and I buy them so I can reread them whenever I feel like it, or just flip back to a certain point that I just want to reminisce on at any point. So they have yet to be broken, their spines, but yeah, I don't really care. It's whatever. Do you write in your books? I don't. I haven't. I did tab Crying in H Mart, and this is the first book I've actually ever tabbed, but I do eventually want to reread a lot of the books I have read on my shelf. I don't really have any strong opinions on that. I just kind of, my go-to thinking is tabbing, but I feel like if there was some really beautiful writing or the way a sentence was structured, like, yeah, maybe I'd underline it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'd say, yeah, I haven't, a pencil has not touched any of these, the pages within these books. Thinking, like giving it some constructive thought, like Tin Man, when I eventually reread that, I think I'll tab it and maybe write in it at the same time. I don't know, this question, the answer to this question is just going off to places that like I didn't expect it to. But I think tabbing is easy for quick reference, so I don't have to like reread the whole thing to know what I've underlined. But I think within the tabbed page, maybe I would underline certain things. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I don't know, maybe I'll do this to tag again in the future and see how my like bookish habits have evolved. So that is all the questions for the My Reading Habits tag. If you feel like wanting to do this tag, go right on ahead. I'm so curious to know some people's answers to these questions, especially question 9, which is, do you read ahead or even skip pages? Like, I'm so curious. Like, do people take the same approach that I do, where they're like on the verge of DNFing and they just kind of want to know if it's going to get somewhere, if it's worth continuing reading, or if that's just like a consistent practice for them. But thank you so much for hanging out for a little bit and watching to the end of this video. I hope you are enjoying what you are reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!